Technology was still creeping in. Mobile phones were not in common use, and I would have to wait for an update of the travels. Reports seemed to indicate that there were always unattended children in the cheap housing, no matter where she lived. She attended them with care, unable to bear the neglect. It wasn't all so serious. She loved to party, would never call it quits until the sun came creeping over the horizon. She came home single and cemented all her friendships, had lunches with the girls, knew the pubs and the clubs and all the characters, danced until closing, the shy child banished by her enthusiasm for living. I was invited to join her on occasions, a privilege to be part of it. Hospitality offered her a world in which she could shine. Always aware of her own clumsiness, she was, however, anxious when starting a new job. Refused ever to write the blackboard menu, afraid to reveal her dyslexia. Enjoyed the daily interaction with her customers, and they with her. A hard worker, she was never one to call even in sick, even though she loved to sleep until afternoon. Night shifts suited her better. She was vital at night. There were other men and other places after that. She could not be home for long before she was busy working hard at putting the money together for another trip. Restless, pulled by the need to travel and to answer her own questions. She loved the challenge. Only ever lived in my house for very brief periods, determined to prove her independence. Moved by the circumstances of the people she met, Julia enjoyed all people, could never resist the opportunity to give. She never drove a car, but claimed that humanity is far more interesting when viewed from the bus. She always carried little gifts, just in case she should run into some needy soul. She once had all her hair shaved off while travelling in Laos, because she was moved by the poverty of the barber. Paid him double and had to buy a wig for her rival in Dublin, where she was about to start a new adventure. Raised as a Catholic, Julia searched for her own spirituality. She was not a church attendee, but would accompany me to Mass at Christmas if she were home. She considered thoughtfully the religious views of others, was aware of the face of God in the faces of the children she met, the people in the street and the friends she made. I remember her call one Christmas morning from Dublin. The city was alive with the ringing of bells, which echoed through the phone. Breathless, she explained that she was running to Mass and sent her Christmas love down through the wires. Dublin was just her sort of city, big enough and small enough, full of people from exotic places. She fell in love with a Nigerian man, a product of Nigerian streets, complete with child in need of a mother. 1 foot still in the world of clubs and pubs, a taste of both worlds. That was what I knew of her. What I knew of him was sketchy. Knowledge of just the bare bones of his life, of what he chose to tell us. Observations of his reactions. He was from New Zealand, had been orphaned when his mother was found floating in a river with half her face removed, and was then raised by his grandmother. His grandmother spoke only Samoan and ruled over Jimmy and his brother with a firm hand. Later he lived with an aunt and uncle who beat him daily. He did not like to be touched and visibly flinched if an acquaintance got too close. The aunt and uncle approached religion with zeal and a heavy hand and insisted on attendance at church. His religious beliefs were a blend of Christianity and Samoan law. He was a problem at school, refused to buckle down, bored by the process of structured learning. ended up living on the streets for some time, but later fathered a child. He told me this, but he told Julia more. He admitted that he had treated the mother of the child very badly, neglected them both and joined the army. Fought in East Timor, but there was no report of why he was discharged. His ambition was to join the Foreign Legion, and he loved to inform any new audience of his intention. "He's a trained killer," Julia observed, perplexed by the notion. The mystery of him was endorsed by the use of more than one surname. He always held off from people, stood firm at the back of the room, watching but not watched. Jimmy avoided eye contact, not from shyness, which was the first impression, but because he liked to have control. He drank very little alcohol and disapproved of any drug use. "He's really straight," Julia declared. He was certainly different to anyone else in our lives. Little did we know that he was to be a complication in our journey.